everyone, welcome to Filmme Talk, a podcast where two gals talk film, television, and everything in between the reels. I'm your host, Eliana Melendez, head of marketing and a critic here at FullCircleCinema.com, and I'm joined today by my ever so lovely co-host, Miss Josie Melendez, also a critic here at Full Circle Cinema. And today is a very long, there she goes. Today's a very long-awaited review since the inception of this podcast.
Yes,
almost a year. We've been at this almost a year. We turn one. Filmme Talk turns 1 in December, and isn't that cute? We should do something. We'll do a little something.
We should. We'll do something.
We'll come up with something. But yes, we are going to be discussing a very, very, very surprisingly divisive film called Eternals, directed by Miss Chloe Zhao. It is the latest offering from the MCU and has sparked a lot of, I want to say, controversy or a lot of conversation. We'll just say it sparked a lot of conversation.
A lot of opinions.
A lot of opinions, flying around, some just floating, some just, being rocket launched, uninvited. But it be like that sometimes. But we're just going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the why, and the future of the MCU. It's definitely not a movie for everyone, which is very interesting. I don't know. I've been marinating with it. I actually saw it last Friday when it came out. We saw it together. I went to New York. But Josie has been kind of keeping a lot of spoilers to herself, very surprisingly not exploding for the past, 3 weeks now that you've seen it? Like you saw it for the first time almost?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was very difficult. I wonder why. I just want to talk about people so much, but gotta respect.
Yeah. We're gonna go keep it no spoilers for the first half of this podcast, as we usually do, and then we're gonna get into spoiler territory later on, but you will obviously be forewarned. But yeah, let's get into it. Josie, this has been your brand for the past 12 months-ish.
I have been championing this film for what feels like my entire life.
Your entire life has been 1 year.
The entirety of 2021 has been dedicated to Eternals, and within reason. I predicted when the trailer was gonna drop. I've been on it. I've been here since the beginning. Eternals news on Twitter has nothing on me, but also thank you for keeping me fed every single day. Y'all are amazing. Yeah, I really like this film. What can I say? I am one of those people that has been defending it, and yes, I do accept, read my review. It's a little bit of everything. It's positive.
Link down below.
I do point out the flaws of the film, but that doesn't mean it's a bad film. I completely disagree. I don't care about Rotten Tomatoes. But it comes to a point that it's, unnecessary. It's so unnecessary. Hello. Rotten Tomatoes gave Uptown Girls a 13%. Therefore, they do not know left from right. But
I like how that's your point of comparison. I respect that.
Eternals is a whole nother thing, because it's just been a while that, people have been trying to bring Marvel down a notch, and it's just very peculiar that they chose this film to do that. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave it there, because a lot of people get very defensive, it is a messy movie. You shouldn't be using the whole POC, female director, and everything. There is a track record here. There is a track record. Let's see Birds of Prey. Let's see Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman. All these films always have this kind of discourse around them, and I'm not going to get into it. If you want to fight me, fight me. But it gets to a point where I'm just very curious as to how this film is being rated and treated, because I had a swell time, and it came to a point that I was even afraid that you weren't gonna like it, because everyone started hating it. It's that everyone started hating it, so I was like, am I wrong? Did I see something did I
doubt came in
copy?
Doubt comes in, plays in the background.
Okay, Hades' sound just plays in the background. Doubt comes in. I was just full of so many doubts, but then I rewatched it and I was like, no, I'm right. And you liked it, so that made me happy.
Yeah, exactly. Surprisingly, we went as a group with a couple other critics, and not Marvel stans at all by any way, shape, or form, and they liked it. It was like the bar was so low for our companions, and we didn't think anybody in the group would like it because they tend to hate Marvel, and it's kind of like, oh, well, this is interesting. What a twist! Y'all wanted a twist.
Oh, y'all wanted a twist.
It still follows the formula, but it also feels new, and there is something being done there, especially the third act. Without spoilers, usually it's a CGI fest in Marvel films, and this one, oh, there's a motorcycle. Okay.
Vroom vroom.
In this one, the effects that were used, everything that was set up in that third act was warranted because you were teasing it throughout the entire film, so it had to happen. There was no way it could not happen, and even yet, it was not overwhelming, which I really liked. And also, the main villain, before going into this film, we knew that the villain or the antagonist of this film was being kept under wraps, and they were playing a lot with perception and deception in the trailers because we didn't know who we were going to be up against.
Right.
So I really liked how in the film, I was surprised. Like, I still had a feeling because I've gotten to the point where I've been able to notice cues in these films as to how it's going to go, but still to the extent of it, I was very happy because it had reason, it was very dynamic, and it just spoke a lot to the family dynamics that they were trying to portray with these characters, because they are sort of a family, which is the most endearing part. And seeing that fight with external forces as well as internal just felt very natural and very human, which is like the main word. Like, Chloe Zhao made this feel very human.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have to agree there because it is, whether you enjoy the movie or not, it is very different. Not only for Marvel, but very different for, let's say, mainstream blockbusters, to see this level of human interaction that it feels so intimate and tender. And like you said, the internal and external conflicts make everything just really interesting. You could say that the movie is a little bit more slow going than your usual Marvel film, but there's still, for me at least, I felt a constant sense of tension throughout because there's a lot of, it follows a more, not completely non-linear narrative, but it is a little bit more back and forth, and it's not all black and white in chronological order, if that makes sense.
That being said, it is kind of a slow burn, but you do not feel the 2 hours and 30 minutes. Again, we've spoken about this here before. I am a 90-minute runtime person.
That's Josie Core.
I did not mind this film. It ended and I was like, wait, that's it? Where's the rest? I want more. So I think Chloe Zhao did a good job because it came to the point where clearly they left a lot out. They had to cut a lot. And that being said, it still felt very clear, concise. I knew what was happening. I understood everything. Because I know a lot of people were comparing this to Dune, and it came to a point where people were calling this one difficult. And I felt Dune was a little bit more complex. It's still, you can still get it, but Dune does not take you by the hand when it comes to explaining everything through the like exposition and the mythology and everything. Because again, it is a two-parter, so that's a little bit more different. This is everything together, so it was easier to get a grip of things. But again,
and Eternals is honestly easier to follow in terms of narrative. It is still way more digestible than Dune, if we're going to compare it, since the conversation has been struck. However, that's just kind of comes with Marvel's territory. And I felt myself being reminded of the things I really loved with ShangChi. I've been thinking about ShangChi a lot the past couple of days. I've been wanting to rewatch.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah, someone shared the video of the beginning.
Chef's kiss.
When he fights his future wife.
ShangChi available on Disney Plus this Friday, which is probably today.
Disney Plus Day.
Disney Plus Day. I'm going to be uploading this probably, but yeah, go watch ShangChi if you haven't seen it, or if you already saw it, go ahead and rewatch it. if you have a Disney Plus
Such
subscription.
a beautiful love story.
Gorgeous movie. And what really reminded me, like Eternals made me think a lot about ShangChi in terms of how lean it is. It is very, very, it's cut, the narrative is cut super tight. In some moments it's cut a little bit too tight, in my opinion. Like there are some moments where I thought, wow, we are like, it's not really letting me take a breath in terms of development.
And that's the thing. Chloe Zhao lets you breathe. Also, bringing up Shang-Chi, I really liked how this film also allowed the space for different languages.
Yes.
Like, we're making Marvel fans read subtitles twice in a row.
2 times in a year? Oh my god. Because they did, they read some subtitles in Black Widow, but it's not a lot. It was just a little bit in the beginning. But like, yeah, there's a lot of, wow, we've made it this far into the episode without saying the word diversity. Oops. But there's a lot of diversity here, not only obviously in terms of the people in the movie, but there's a lot of diversity in terms of languages and the way the story itself is communicated. And I love that.
And cultures.
I really, really like that. It didn't, of course, diversity never feels forced, but none of it felt on the nose. None of it felt like diversity for diversity's sake.
Yeah, especially because it would make sense for all these characters to represent the way we look like now, because Kevin Feige has said it, Chloe Zhao, Victoria Alonso, Salma Hayek even said it on the red carpet. It's just nice being able to see gods, quote unquote, because they're not really gods, even though some of them think they are.
It
is nice to see them look like the people they are trying to help. And also, I mean, if you think about it, if they were all white, this would be a white savior movie real quick, and it would be very problematic because their entire purpose was to help humanity. So,
bit much, mate, bit much.
Yeah, and that is not what we need, because that is not true.
Exactly.
That is not how it went, but
yeah.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard movie to talk about without spoiling it, because the trailers are very deceptive. Not in the sense that it's not selling you the wrong vibe. You're getting this vibe. You're getting this tone.
They're just misleading you. Misdirection.
There's misdirection. There's subversion, and it really works out. I love how there's some plot twists where you kind of saw them coming, because it was like very like clinically calculated and built up that way. But then they just kind of hit you with another one and be like, oh, okay, see, we got to keep you on your toes narratively. And I like that. I did like that. Okay, so slight technical difficulties. We're regrouping our thoughts. So we might pivot to something else. Can't remember what we last said because it's been a little bit. But yeah, the film's family dynamics, internal and external conflicts. We talked about that a little bit. I do think it's a good slow burn. I think it's good at building up tension. I understand the concern that some people present when they think, oh, they tried to set up way too much in one movie with what the MCU has been doing. Like, it took like 10 years to set up the Avengers, which quite honestly, I disagree with. And here's why. This is just my opinion. Marvel took 10 years, right, to build up to, let's say, Endgame, right? Infinity War and Endgame. This was a story that was built up for 10 years. These are a crap load of characters. Okay. Tell me how many movies those characters had. Had like maybe some of them one movie. Had Black Panther. Black Panther was in Civil War a little bit, and then they had their own solo movie. Had one movie. Captain America was one of the most developed. Iron Man. And yet, most of their character development came in much, 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 much later. Because those first, like, let's say 5 to 6 years of the MCU were honestly just very superficial character.
Let's
Let's fuck around and find out they did, and a lot of it is just very superficial character exploration. We didn't really dive deep into anything until far later into the MCU. And what Eternals does here is not waste time. Eternals cuts down a lot of the fat of character development that, these other famous Avengers characters took years to make. And I have to say, Captain America is not the deepest character.
No.
Hello? Captain America is not the deepest character. Iron Man is one of the deeper characters because he's had a million frickin' movies. Mm-hmm. He has to have some character development at some point as a result, as consequence. Shang-Chi only had one movie, and we had a wonderful exploration into Shang-Chi and the characters around him. However, in Shang-Chi, they focused more on a smaller set of characters, much, much, much smaller than Eternals, and really let loose with its action. Shang-Chi is very action-heavy. Eternals is not. They're very different movies, but and I know it seems kind of weird to compare them, but they just came out recently, and they're like top tier Marvel for these certain reasons. And I would love to double feature.
There's also the aspect that when you talk about the Marvel formula, I really do think that Shang-Chi followed the Marvel formula more to the T than Eternals. Eternals felt entirely new, and I think that's what discomforts people, especially. Okay, so I was going to say especially like fans of Marvel, but you know what? Fans are loving the film. The audience score is there. Mm-hmm. So it's just critics that probably went in with the wrong idea because it's Chloe Zhao.
But yeah, whether you've seen it or not, if you haven't seen it and have been on the fence about it and you're a Marvel fan, I would say honestly dive right into it. I think you're going to get at least something out of it. It has a lot of heart. It is definitely more in tune with the likes of, I'm trying to compare it to something else that's from Marvel so people can kind of compare it to, but it's just, Eternals really does
stand on its own.
It stands on its own. It does make the effort to set itself apart. But if you are the person, and I like the Ant-Man movies. I think they're very wholesome. I think they're very wholesome movies, and they're, you get to really enjoy and love and care for the characters. That's what you get more of in Eternals, except it's just, way more adult. It is way more mature. It is definitely a really, really good exploration in the moral gray areas of these superpowered beings, especially superpowered beings that have been on Earth for over 7,000 years and have basically overseen, the development and evolution of humanity for since forever. And I think there's a lot. It's a very political movie. It's kind of hard not to be political. And in that sense, I also think of Dune a lot. Dune is a heavily political movie. It's just too afraid to be more blunt about it. To put it that way. Dune definitely is afraid to acknowledge its white colonizer wholeheartedly. It tries to make you empathize with Paul Atreides more than it probably should, more than from what I've read. It's even more than the book itself. So it's definitely trying to make you empathize with a white savior, and this movie does not really do that. It doesn't take. It really says these are the problems. These characters are problematic. This romance is problematic. You're not supposed to root for these things. We're just presenting it to you. And they suffer the consequences. There's actual stakes involved. And I don't want to spoil anything just yet, but when you watch it, you're like, oh, so they weren't, they really weren't afraid to just go for it and make really, really blunt decisions in terms of the story that do hit home, that do make sense in the story. And I don't know, it just feels like, oh, this is real. They're trying to survive, and it's not always going to work out that way. It's not always going to work out, and, you know, they're not going to always save the day successfully or without any casualties. And I really like that. And you actually see them deal with that and deal with the weight of their actions, which is something we kind of scratched the surface of in Civil War. But then again, that was built up over, you know, for years, and still, as high as the stakes were, it doesn't feel as stressful as it does in Eternals, you know, in a certain way. Agree with me or disagree with me all you want. That's just how I've been feeling, how I've been thinking about for the past, I watched it, almost a week ago. And that's just how it's been marinating with me. Definitely not a trash film. Definitely not forced diversity. It is absolutely an evolution in the MCU formula. It does respect the formula in a certain sense, but it definitely expands upon it and makes an effort to set itself apart. Much more character driven, not as action heavy, but I will say the action we do get, it's good. It's really fun. And Zhao knows when to cut it short. Zhao knows when to be like, okay, that's enough, let's move on. It doesn't overextend things, which is why I think that third act doesn't turn into that usual CGI mess that MCU films tend to have. It doesn't feel as overextended as they tend to be, which is also a criticism of ShangChi. That third act can feel a little bit heavy if you're not into like these, you know, this huge CGI spectacle. I personally loved it. I thought it was very well executed, but I do understand, you know, people feeling like, okay, I get it. We get it. It's a bit much. That's also how I felt with Dune. It got to a point where I was like, you're repeating yourself. You're not impressing me anymore. And it got boring. With Eternals, it really just kind of keeps you on your toes. It definitely keeps you on your toes. Any other spoiler-free thoughts?
No, I want to get into spoilers.
Okay, spoilers. Please, if you have not seen the movie, if you've had the movie spoiled for you and you still haven't seen it, honestly, just avoid this. Just go in, you know, as blind as you can, because people have been really rude on Twitter spoiling the movie, and it's just been a bit much. But yeah, let's get into it. Go off, sis. What are you? Icarus flew a little too close to the sun, huh?
Icarus is flying.
Bastille plays in the background. We're not gonna get copyright striked. We don't monetize these videos.
No. Salma Hayek dying hurt me. Thena killing the deviant was badass. The scene where Icarus is going to kill Cersei, but then he doesn't because he loves her so much and is very conflicted between love and duty. Was beautiful because the orchestra just so it was great.
The score is 10 out of 10 as well.
I wish it had played more. I wish there was more score to deal with, because it was very subtle and it gave way more, because Zhao isn't score heavy. So that was a part of it, but you had such great compositions that when they hit. Yeah. So I wish we could have gotten that all the time. I really like the effects. The monsters were cool. Again, Richard Madden was great. I'm gonna keep saying
Obviously.
it. He gave me Fallen Angel, and I was like, ooh. Yes. Kit Harington was great. Brian Tyree Henry was great.
I love to see, you know what? Remember earlier this year when we said we wanted to see more of Brian Tyree Henry?
Yes.
We asked, and we honestly
we received
tenfold. Yeah, I just think that everyone,
the cast was great.
The entire cast was so solid. I understand people, and you know what? I think it's part of the magic of the movie in a certain sense. Some people think it's its downfall. I think it's so much fun to have so many characters, and everyone just connects so deeply with a different one. And be like, oh, I wish we'd gotten more of them. I wish we'd gotten more of them. We didn't need as much. we are going to get more of them. But at the same time, there's
That's
10
the
of
thing.
them. There's 10,
Yeah.
but everyone
They
found
serve
one
their
to love.
purpose.
Exactly. They all serve their purpose. None of it was overextended. I think the more prominent Eternals being Icarus, Cersei, Sprite, eventually Kingo, etc., I think they played their part super well. I think if we had gone in too fast into the entire group, it would have been super messy. It would have been super messy.
I think the way that this was structured was really great, because I don't see how else they could have done it, because you're introducing characters and then you go to the past and then you keep going along that journey with them, and you're going through the film leading up to how we got to where we were at the beginning. So I thought it was a really nice circle.
Yeah, it definitely it obviously wasn't as, and I always, when I think of non-linear narratives, I always go back to The Witcher season 1. I don't remember. I don't think you've seen The Witcher. For those of you who have seen Witcher, it's a Netflix original series. Season 2 is coming soon. Very good, but one of its, I'll say novelties is that it's extremely non-linear. Like, you look at that narrative and it looks like a cardiac arrest. That's the line. That timeline is just so out of whack. Eternals is just a little bit more diluted. Eternals is not hard to follow, but it does go, it covers a lot. It has a very, very wide range. It tries to make it as digestible as possible, which is its strength and also its weakness at some points. There were some points where I was like, okay, I don't know how to feel about this character going through this, because I feel like I haven't been with them enough to be emotionally invested. But then at the same time, they sat with me. Because I was like, what more information did I truly need? Which leads me, brings me back to how lean the script is. The things that they sacrificed were things that weren't super... We still got the point. We would think, before cutting things down, we would think, oh, we can't sacrifice that. Without that, people won't understand this character, their motivations, and their purpose. But we still got that. So I think that's really, really hard to do. Again, I understand it does get a little bit overwhelming with so many characters, and you're trying to keep up with them. However, I cannot see or think of a better way to have structured it, because it's such a tall order to work with 10 characters in one film. Let me rephrase that, because I already hear the Avengers Infinity War was doing that. No. I already hear them in the background. It's a very tall order to introduce 10 brand new characters in one film in the MCU, in a franchise that it kind of stands out and it has made a brand of multiple film character arcs. Okay. I've said my piece. I got it out. It's come out of my brain. But yeah, it's just, please tell me, could you have done it better? 'Cause I doubt very few people could have done it better than that. Because we still went through their grief with them. We still felt their pain. We felt their happiness. We felt their joy. We felt their purposes. We felt their relationships. I think what really stood out to me in this film, other than the obviously phenomenal female characters that we were able to get, some of the best female characters in the entirety of the MCU, because they actually felt human and three-dimensional for once, honestly. It's just, I love the range in relationship dynamics. I love that not every partnership has to be romantic. I love how it also showed the power of deep mutual respect and just love and intimacy that two people can have. In particular, I think of Thena and Gilgamesh. I think they're two phenomenal characters. Angelina Jolie, of course, killed
love
it.
them.
But Angelina Jolie is such a powerhouse actress that did a phenomenal job of not taking over the scene. She didn't overpower everyone because she could have, everyone was just bounced off each other so well because everyone has their purpose there. I think if I were to choose a weak link or like the weakest performance, and I'm not saying it was a bad performance, but when you have like this caliber, if you're up here with acting, I believe the actress for Sprite was probably the weakest. But this is also a child that we're talking about. So, just keep that in consideration. I totally get that with Sprite, there was a little bit more of that tell and not show rather than the other way around. And that kind of took me out of it at times. But it wasn't overbearing. It wasn't as annoying as it could have been. It wasn't as tell and don't show as Marvel tends to be, but it's, you do feel in those moments where, you had the Marvel execs in the background being like, okay, but we still have to check these boxes, Zhao. Chloe, we need to check these boxes. So I do really respect that there was more creative freedom given to Chloe Zhao, but obviously this is still not solely her project. She still made it fit and took the MCU into consideration, and the way that she transitioned these stories to expand the MCU even further. I think this is one of the biggest films of the year in terms of the future of the MCU. And I know that No Way Home is right around the corner, but as of right now, I think even, I don't know what to expect from No Way Home, obviously, but I think even with that, the most expansive and big picture film of Marvel in this current phase is Eternals.
Yeah, because it's one of the first films in this phase that I think sets up something directly, because most of the other ones have been a little bit vague. Mm-hmm. It's mostly like, oh, after the movie, let me log on to YouTube and look at some ending explained videos. Right. Meanwhile, with this one, immediately you're like, okay, first post-credit scene, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Very much.
Second post-credit scene, Blade. We got it. We know. Now we're looking forward
to it. We don't need that much explanation unless you, of course, obviously don't know the details of the lore, but you get it. The vibes are there, which is actually really cool of Zhao to do. Like, Zhao was able to just shift the tone so naturally with that first post-credit scene, with the music, with the vibes. It was just, oh, okay, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is coming. That's what this is leading us into.
Another woman setting up everything for James Gunn to take all the credit.
I said this before and I'll say it again.
And I'll repeat it for
Thank you.
I just said it. You're not wrong, and we're gonna say it because,
yeah. The blueprint has been set.
Yeah.
And who's gonna get the praise? I digress. So yeah, I think Eternals is just at minimum decent MCU. At minimum, as critical. If you want to get super critical with it, fine, call it mid-tier. But it's not low-tier MCU. By no means.
It's not a bad film. Like, at most, it feels like a 4-star film. Like, it feels like a 4-star film. Nothing less. I don't think it should go less than a 6. If you give it a 6, I don't trust you. But also, it's just funny because a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't like it. But then they give it 3 stars on Letterboxd. And I'm like, 3 stars is not bad.
I gave Soho 3 stars. And I was being generous. Because Soho's still a good film. I gave Last Duel 3 stars, and you know what? I'm gonna knock it down a star after sitting with it. I gotta do that. Listen. It gets to a point. I was at the point. I was like, I feel dirt. I it was that moment where I was like, I feel dirty calling this a bad movie because it's so just well produced, or you're just so technically nice. Which is also, which is also how I felt with Dune. Dune's not that good of a movie.
Because Dune is nearly a perfect film in terms of filmmaking, but story-wise, let's talk about it a little bit. No, we're not going to talk about it because it's an Eternals video.
Thank you.
So, Eternals was great. I wish I could talk more about Richard Madden, but we would be here for hours. And also, that is a perfect segue for you guys to check out Madden Raving when we upload the Eternals episode, where we will be discussing Richard Madden in the film, as well as more thoughts that probably escaped us during this recording. But yeah, I think my favorite dynamic was Thena and Gilgamesh, which we mentioned. I wish we would have gotten more Salma Hayek.
For sure.
But she definitely served her purpose. And if there was someone that could hold the impact and the weight that Ajax needed to have to be able to push this team forward, like, I believed everything because she was Ajax. So even though her time was short-lived, I would have, like Cersei, I would have been like, we're going to like do everything we can to honor Ajax's name, because I just saw Salma Hayek as her, and I felt the power. I felt the power.
I felt her authority.
I felt her authority. I felt her presence, especially like she's the first one to talk in the film. She introduces us. She starts it all off. She's like, "It is time," and I'm like, "Yes, ma'am. Yes,
it really is. It really is the time."
I remember the first time I saw it, whenever she showed up on screen, I would just cry.
The
like,
impact that has.
At the same time.
And especially...
Yeah, twin tears down my face.
She was honestly one of my favorite aspects of the film, right up there with Thena. Of course, Thena got more screen time. But Salma Hayek being able to be a superhero, be an authority, not be reduced to a stereotype, as unfortunately she has had to suffer through in the past and for the majority of her career, to see her in a little bit more of a serious role and absolutely fucking dominate it. Ven la cara morenita en su traje de superhéroe. For those of you who haven't seen her interview during the press tour, it's in Spanish, but I believe it's been subtitled, and it really goes to show why representation matters. It goes to show why it is so important. Whether or not you liked the film, it is important to not erase the way that not only did we got such a diverse cast, but the impact that has with such an impressionable audience. Because yes, it's a more mature Marvel film, but kids are watching this. That a brown girl is going to see herself in Ajax and wear her fucking costume to Halloween next year. That a deaf or hard of hearing girl is going to see Makari and think she's like me. She's like me for real, and going to dress up as her. I cannot wait for Comic-Cons to come back, because I used to be a cosplayer, and the impact, and I know this is going to sound silly, but the cultural impact that having such larger scale characters that look like you for once, that talk like you, perhaps they have your accent, they speak your language, that matters a lot. We saw it with Black Panther. We saw it, judge the first Wonder Woman all you want. Wonder Woman made a huge fucking impact on younger girls and just women in general, to see themselves on the big screen as, powerful yet emotionally dynamic human beings. And that's also what we see a lot, not just with, there's no one token woman. There's no one way to be a woman. There's no one way to be feminine in this film. We have Athena being a woman who is strong and badass and can, kill you with a look. But she's as graceful as feminine as a ballerina, and she is never judged for it. She's never afraid to do so. She always does so confidently. And she also confidently leans on her family and the people around her who care and love her and protect her. So it's wonderful to see such a dynamic humanity, essentially. It's good to see these dynamic human relationships on the big screen in such a massive blockbuster. So yeah, I think that's really important. I really wanted to get that out there. So think before you speak when you talk about this movie. That's about it. Where can they find you?
Yeah.
Did I make everyone cry in the Chili's tonight?
I am emotional.
Are we crying in the club? Hi.
So you can find me at the Josie Marie on Twitter and Letterboxd.
Oh, just Twitter and Letterboxd?
Oh, where else should they find me? You can also find me
There you
now,
go.
Full Circle Cinema, The Cherry Fix. You can find me on Cinema in Your World podcast.
Yes.
Shall I go
She's
on?
everywhere, gal. Yeah.
I'm
Definitely go
everywhere.
follow her. She's doing awesome things and got bigger things ahead of her, obviously. You can find me at Captain Melendez on Twitter and Instagram and also Letterboxd. I haven't even logged Eternals on Letterboxd yet. I should probably do that. I forgot! It's been busy. It's been busy. Girl, you cannot judge me. We got out of that movie theater in like freaking New York at like almost 11 o'clock at night. Just completely sleep deprived. It's a miracle we got back. It's a miracle we got back to your apartment. Okay? I do not have time, nor brain cells, nor energy to log this movie. So if you want to see what I log it, or how I log it on Eternals, how I log Eternals on Letterboxd, go ahead and follow me there. Be sure to follow Full Circle Cinema on Twitter and Instagram, and also we're on Facebook. And be sure to subscribe here on YouTube at Full Circle Cinema, and turn on the notifications to see more film talk, more reviews, more roundtables. I know that I see the comments. I know some of you have been more active. I love to see that. I love to see that people have been enjoying this show, as small and as quirky and sassy as it gets. I know y'all like the sass, and I know y'all like the memes, and we will keep delivering the sass and the memes. What else? I hope you guys have a lovely day, evening, wherever you are listening. If you are listening to this, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast, or wherever you are listening to podcast. Of course, most of you, I know, watch this on YouTube because I put a lot of effort into these graphics and memes, and I appreciate you all appreciating this as well. Yeah, I think I've gone on long enough. Go watch Eternals, and
Go watch it. Go watch it right now. I know it's not even about Marvel, but give this movie.
Give it a chance, even if you're not a Marvel fan.
Just go.
Again, we've seen a lot of fellow Marvel fans enjoy it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not their number one, it's still an enjoyable film. Even if you're not a Marvel fan, this might, be right up your alley. Because it does have a little bit of that, I don't want to say art house. It's definitely not art house, but it's definitely more of a...
Mm-hmm.
more of an artful film. We'll leave it at that. It's definitely, if I were to describe this film, it's the Lord Solar Power era. That's how I think of this film. Now we can close. Bye.
Icarus isn't dead. Bye.